Welcome to Our Highest Work, a podcast where we are gathering and sharing the best ideas for spiritually based business and life success. My name is George Cow, and on today's episode, we're going to be discussing consciously spending, investing, and giving money. In the previous episode, we talked about consciously, ethically making money, bringing in the income. Today, we're going to talk about consciously the outflow of our income in a conscious way. And this is obviously important because the age-old quote of "a penny saved is a penny earned" is incredibly true. If you know how to make a lot of money, but you are also very unconscious about your spending, etc., you won't get to invest or give much of it at all because you haven't gotten in control of your outflow habits. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I now have a mind map about conscious money flow. I just made it public today, and I will be posting that mind map link in the episode notes page. As always, I welcome you to comment on this episode. If you're on the video page, you can comment below. Sometimes the comments area is below the video, sometimes it's on the right side of the video. If you are able to access our Facebook group, I always appreciate the comments in the Facebook thread of the episode instead of on the video page, if possible, but either one is great. If you're just listening and want to find the video page or the Facebook page, you can go to ourhighestwork.com/32, since this is episode 32. All right, so let's get going and to the spending topic. Okay, so first, with regards to spending, I'm going to talk about what the sort of more mainstream advice is regarding how to spend wisely. And then I'll talk about sort of more conscious spending. Okay? All right. So the mainstream advice I'm going to borrow from Elizabeth Warren. She wrote a book with her daughter called All Your Worth, and they have a neat formula in that book, which is that whenever you get in regards to your regular income, 50%. About 50% should be spent on what they call must-haves, and I'll talk about that. And 30% can be spent on wants. Up to 30% can be spent on wants, the things that fund money, basically. And then they say that 20% ideally should be put into savings. So let's talk about this formula. I thought it was a reasonable formula. So they say that 50% should be spent on must-haves. I call them needs. And their rationale is that if you suddenly need to go and live on disability income from the government or from a disability insurance is usually only about 50% of your regular income. So, or unemployment checks is another one. It's usually about 50% of your regular income. So it's wise to learn how to live on just 50% of your income for the needs that you have. Or another example is if you are in a two-income household, you and a spouse both make money, and if you, for some reason, one of you loses your job, or God forbid you get divorced or something, you need to learn to live on one income. So let's say about half. So again, 50% on needs is a wise number, and the needs include rent or mortgage, and if you also need to pay property taxes, figure that into the needs category. Groceries, and I'll say here healthy groceries, so not unnecessary snacks, so healthy food and healthy snacks. Car payment, if you actually need a car for going to work or for getting groceries or for family reasons, obviously you need to get a car, but otherwise try using the public transportation. It's usually cheaper than having a car payment and fixing the car and all that stuff, car insurance, all the things that are related to a car. But besides public transportation, there are peer-to-peer car sharing services such as getaround.com, GETAROUND.com, or Relay Rides, RELAYRIDS. So getaround.com or relayrides.com are peer-to-peer, and there's many, many around the world. Just you can Google peer-to-peer car sharing. There's lots of them out there. Okay, another need is insurance. So health insurance, disability insurance, home insurance, car insurance, and in fact, in America, in the United States, car insurance is required. I think it's required in all 50 states, at least in California. It's a law that you must have car insurance if you drive a car. Okay, another need would be appliances that you use on a regular basis: a refrigerator, a computer, a phone, a washer and dryer. Although, you know, if you live near a laundromat, I would question whether you need a washer dryer. I think that would be more like a want. But anyway, unless you do a lot of laundry, then yeah, having a washer dryer at home makes sense. Clothing that you need for work, the basics, not fancy shoes and handbags and ties and whatever, but just basic clothes that you are required to have for work would be considered in the needs area. Okay, so that's 50% of your income spent on the needs that we just talked about. It would be wise to have about 50%. Okay, I should say up to 50%. All right, the next category is up to 30% of your income spent on wants or fun money. Now, the book All Your Worth by Elizabeth Warren, they do recommend that you try to spend about 30% because a lot of money advice doesn't take into account happiness or joy or fun. And if you want to live a lifestyle that is truly content and happy and balanced, you do need to have some money set aside for having fun. And fun money wants in this 30% category can be, some people like to spend money on, I'm just listing some things that I saw from the book. These aren't my wants, but from the book, it's like cable television, clothing beyond the basics. I don't buy either one. Restaurant meals, I definitely do that. Concert tickets, comic books, knitting supplies. You could think of other things like taking trips that you don't really need to take but are fun. Okay, so that's 30% of your incomes, up to 30% spent on wants. And then 20% is what they recommend spent on savings. And savings, as you know from the episode number 30, I call them buffers, right? Buffers. So you can listen to episode 30 to get my thoughts on what the 20% should go into, buffers. Now, after the 20%, after you've saved enough for your buffers, you might have a regular amount each month that you put away into your various buffers, as well as your long-term care buffer. Some people call it retirement savings. I call that long-term care, right? After you've gotten some money regularly saved for that, then you have money for investing and giving, and I'll talk about that later in this episode. First, I want to talk also about spending in regards to credit cards. This is a really big topic for some people. Now, I know some people really, some financial advice gurus really dislike credit cards because it's a very easy temptation to just spend money on credit cards, and then that blossoms into a lot of debt that you're not conscious of because you haven't planned well enough, etc. I would say that these days, because of marketing, it is more and more tempting to use credit cards and to be unconscious about them. So if you have had a pattern of unconsciously using credit cards and not paying them off every month, now that's the key. I use credit cards because it's convenient. I don't have to carry cash on me all the time. I use them, but I pay off all of my credit cards every month. I have zero credit card debt. at the end of each month, I pay off whatever the amount I've used in the previous month is. Okay, so at the end of, so I never pay any interest on my credit cards. Now, if you've had trouble with that, you may want to stop your credit cards and just use debit cards, so pulling money only from the bank, or use cash. But if you are a planner, if you like to plan, then I really recommend that you still use credit cards. It's convenient, but pay off your credit cards every single month. Now, if you currently have credit card debt, usually the percentage of interest is quite high. So I recommend that when it comes to your 20% savings, your buffer, right? Much of that money really should be going to paying off your credit card debt, because it's usually a higher percentage than your mortgage, right? Or higher percentage than your student loans, right? Or higher percentage than your car payment, right? Etc. Okay, let's go on now to the section about conscious, ethical spending, I should say. Now, every dollar you spend, now some of you live abroad, not in the United States, so it would be a dollar, be a pound, or whatever it is, money that you have. But every time you make a purchase, you are either voting for a world in which companies care about the environment and care about their employees' happiness and care about their effect on their local community, or you're voting for a world where companies don't care about the environment. They pollute the environment because it's free most of the time to pollute the environment. They don't care about the happiness of their workers because they can always recruit more workers, or they don't care about their effect on their local community because it's not, unless they only follow the minimum laws rather than care about their impact on their local. So remember that every time you make a purchase, you are voting for one of these two worlds: a better world or a world that we don't want to live in. So when it comes to spending, my advice is try your best to not be a part of the problem. Don't be a part of the problem. Spend mindfully. Spend your money on companies that are more conscious. And I did a whole episode about mindful consumption. So look into the archives of our highest work and look for the Mindful Activism series. Okay. The other thing I want to say about, the other thing I didn't say in the Mindful Activism series is about buying local. Okay, buying local. Why is it important to spend money on businesses that are owned by people who live in your community? By your community, I mean people who live in either your city or your general regional area. The reason is because when you spend money with businesses that are owned by local people, they take the money, and then because they live locally, they spend that money on other businesses that are, they're more likely to spend money on businesses that are local to them, versus if you spend money on a company that's owned by people that live far away, you are all the time, you're sending money outside of your community. As you buy that thing, the business owner who lives far away in another country, in another part of the world, they will be spending money usually on things around them, the restaurants around them, they get a haircut to their local barber, whatever, right? So just be conscious of that. If you want to strengthen your local economy and the community ties that you have in your local area, really try to spend money with local businesses, okay? And some examples, very obvious examples, are very, I should say, you can't go wrong if you go to your local farmers market. Farmers markets are where local farmers, at least within the region, they bring the vegetables and fruits they've grown and meats they've grown locally, and then they sell at the farmers market. I go to the farmers market every week, so I try to spend as much of my food money at my local farmers market as I can. And my local farmers market, gratefully, the one I go to, most of them sell organic produce, whether it's certified or not certified, not using pesticides, so that's great. See if you have community cooperatives. Some businesses in your local community are co-ops, And if you spend money there, very likely it's a co-op that's a local co-op. Okay. The other thing about conscious spending I want to say is to be aware of marketing manipulation. Marketing manipulation. I'm very conscious nowadays not to spend money with businesses, companies, authors, experts, whoever, who use manipulative marketing. Because I know that there are always a good alternative that doesn't use manipulative marketing. So rather than spending money, and unfortunately, manipulative marketing works on human beings because it uses fear and greed and all of our baser instincts. So it works a lot. It's oftentimes goes viral, manipulative marketing. So a lot of the products that we do see, unfortunately, you know, the emails we get from this coach marketing this thing, this informational product program, a lot of times they use manipulative. So a lot of the marketing we do see is manipulative because that's the stuff that works like gangbusters on human beings. I'm trying to model a better way, but unfortunately, not unfortunately, I should say, a higher road marketing doesn't go viral as easily as manipulative marketing does. Not that it can't, but it takes us more work, right? The higher road guys. So and it's usually for longer term. I know that my connection with you is going to last longer. Hopefully, hopefully I've built more trust with you than the manipulative marketers have built with you, right? So the manipulative marketers have to keep doing their marketing constantly to churn and burn through new people, because people, they might buy the manipulative thing and then find out the thing doesn't work as well as it's marketed or whatever, right? And so they have to keep selling, they have to keep burning and churning, and it seems like they're doing great in the short term, but they are working much, much harder in the long term. Whereas with ethical marketing, we are working harder in the short term, but we are working less in the long term. And in the short term, we feel much more happiness and fulfillment. Whereas the manipulative guys, they might feel some rush of excitement because they're earning a lot of money in the short term, but then mid to long term, they have psychological problems, conscience problems, spiritual issues as well. So I am basically aware not to spend money with them. And I'll give you an example. And this is an example that some of you may have spent money on this, but there's been a product recently that most of my marketing partners, my previous marketing partners, as well as some of my clients, have bought this product. It's called Webinar Jam. It had a very huge launch recently. And I know the people behind Webinar Jam. I've bought their stuff in the past, and I find their marketing very manipulative. I just from having experience with their business in the past, over the years, I feel like they're in it for the money. They're in it for the profit. They're not so much in it for truly serving the people, and they use a lot of tactics that I don't agree with in their marketing. So even though Webinar Jam is a very convenient webinar technology, people go, George, you're the webinar guru. Don't you want to buy this thing and use this? I say, you know what? No, I'm going to use other methods. Sure, I'm going to use Google Hangouts on Air because I believe Google is a more ethical company than these Webinar Jam guys. And so, yes, I'll work harder when I use Google Hangouts on Air. It doesn't have some of the features that Webinar Jam does, but I don't care. I would rather work a bit harder than have more convenience supporting a product, because when I use Webinar Jam, my audience is going to learn about Webinar Jam, and they're going to be supporting more of this manipulative stuff. So you see what I mean? So I would rather work harder and take the higher road, because I know that, and I feel good in the short term because my conscience is clear, and for the long term, my audience trusts me more. Do you see the difference? So spend money not on manipulative marketing, but look for an alternative. There's always an alternative, and if there's no alternative, you don't need it. And in fact, that is my next topic about spending consciously, is needing less. Needing less. And I just want to take a quick moment to thank those who are live with me on this episode, commenting away. Barbara Freeman, Victoria Del Harris, Kay Williams, thank you so much for your kindness and being here live. Funny thing about needing less is I made the decision after the last episode that I realized that I was getting really needy about having a live audience. And, I think in terms of our spiritual growth, we need to learn how to need less in all areas, except for love. Love, and as I mentioned last time about love, unconditional love is actually being given to you at all times. I believe by God and by the angels that are continually helping and supporting you. It's just that most of us aren't psychic enough, intuitive enough to sense that unconditional love that's surrounding us and bathing us and infusing us all the time. And we aren't, I'm not psychic, so if those of us who aren't psychic and can't sense that unconditional love, we simply consciously practice giving gratitude and imagining that love, because it's there, in my opinion and understanding. So the only thing we really need is love, right? And basic food and shelter and all the basic stuff. We don't need most of what is marketed to us. We don't need almost all of what's marketed to us. And but it's hard to remember that. And I hope that in this podcast, Our Highest Work, I'll always keep bringing us back to the remembrance of hopefully what your highest truth is, whatever that is for you. And in my understanding, the highest truth is that we need very, very little to truly be happy. And so the less we realize that we need, the less and it takes practice, and it takes development. It's not like suddenly, overnight, you sell all your possessions and you say, well, I don't really, George says I don't really need much of anything, so I'm going to sell most of what I have. The next day, you're going to be quite miserable because your system, your consciousness is not yet at that level. It's not yet prepared to not need all those things. So right now, we are, at whatever level of neediness we are, it's not overnight change. It's a gradual and conscious practice of needing less and less over time. Checking in, maybe on a yearly basis. Maybe it's even a monthly basis, checking in to your credit card statements and to your budget and saying, what is one thing I can need less? What's one thing I can tweak in my spending this coming month to just need a little bit less, to buy a little bit less, and to fulfill that deeper need in a more natural and non-commercial way. Another practice would be before every major purchase, ask yourself, what is the deeper need behind this purchase? And how can I meet this need in a more natural, I shouldn't say natural, in a less commercial way, in a more divine way, without needing to buy something, right? In our society, for most of us listening to this, we live in a society that has lost touch with community. If we lived in a more intentional community, imagine if we lived in an eco-village intentional community, we would need to buy a lot less stuff. We would depend on one another for more. For example, instead of going to see a movie in a movie theater, if we lived in an eco-intentional community, we would sing songs together. We would enjoy one another's company. We would tell stories to one another. We would play games that we could play without buying stuff, you see. And we would probably feel more fulfilled because human beings have evolved over millions of years to be tribal creatures. It's only in the past maybe 200 years that we've lost a lot of the tribal community that we used to have. And so we can't evolve so quickly into not needing people. We're still going to need people for probably thousands more years because that's what our makeup is, our human evolution is. And so if you can consciously bring more community into your life, more positive social interaction, especially in-person social positive interaction, you'll find yourself filling that hole in your heart that most of us fill that hole in their heart with shopping, with buying stuff. And that when we buy stuff, it does fill the hole in our heart, but maybe for a very short time. You know, for some of us, it's only for a day. For some of us, buying a new pair of shoes may fulfill that hole in our hearts every time we wear those new shoes for maybe a month. But then that hole is still there. And that hole in our hearts, I believe, is filled by God. In my belief, again, you have to find your own way. But I believe it's filled by spiritual growth. And I believe it's filled by human community, and I believe it's also filled by contact with the natural environment, so being in nature. So those three things, I think, fill that hole in our hearts that cannot be filled by material things. So consciously bring more positive social in-person interaction into your weekly schedule. And also consciously bring more spiritual growth into your daily schedule, and consciously bring more contact with the natural environment into your weekly schedule, and you'll find yourself naturally, again, it's a process, but you'll find yourself naturally needing less, needing to buy less, to be, in fact, you'll be happier even though you need to buy less, and that's the miracle of it. Another tool that I'll share with you for needing less is the new economy of peer-to-peer sharing. If you go to google.com and Google peer-to-peer sharing economy, peer, P-E-E-R, peer-to-peer sharing economy, you will see that there are so many websites these days that help people share things with each other, so that you don't have to buy your own lawnmower. If you go on the website, and you'll find that there's a website, there's some website in your country that allows you to find that your neighbors have a lawnmower that you can borrow, or maybe you have some kind of power tool that your neighbors need. You don't use it all the time. You use it maybe a few times a year. Well, if you have the thing, why not lend it to your neighbor? And what you're doing there is you're allowing someone else not to have to buy as much, and you're also building community. And you feel great because this thing is in use instead of sitting in your garage. We can share all kinds of things. In my community, we have a lot of peer-to-peer car sharing. So my wife and I own only one small car because she uses it almost every day for work. But when I need to go on some kind of a trip or something, and my wife's using the car, I will use either get around or relay rides. And there are people in my community within walking distance that the same day I can look for which cars are available. I'll pay, for whatever, and I'll borrow someone's car who's just sitting there, and I'll pay, whatever less than I would pay for renting it from, Hertz or whatever major rental company. So there's a lot of peer-to-peer sharing that's available. So look, again, go to google.com and search peer-to-peer sharing economy. Look at all the websites that are available. I will also put some links in the mind map in this area. Okay. Another one about needing less or needing to buy less is repairing or making instead of buying. So when something breaks down that you actually use, think about trying to repair it instead of throwing it away and buying a new one. Okay? There's very little that we need to buy new all the time. I mean, one aspect where we probably do need to buy new, unfortunately, every couple of years is our computers and our phones, because the problem is that software is continually getting more and more advanced, and the older computers this new software makes it run very, very slowly. So that's an unfortunate part where we do need to figure out how to recycle our computers. And in fact, in your community, look for recycling. Just Google, your city, and then recycling computers or recycling phones. And please, please do recycle the electronics that you have. So electronics, in terms of computers and phones, we probably do need to buy new ones all the time. But a refrigerator, I mean, come on, your refrigerator keeps your food cold. Why do you need the new fancy one? Repair it and use it, right? I don't know, other appliances and other. If your table breaks, instead of just chucking it out and buying a new one, repair the table, have it repaired, right? This is a lot more sustainable for the earth, and you will find more fulfillment in it, because you do connect with an older furniture. There's a history there. You know, there's a sentimentality there too. All right, let's go on to the final part of the episode, and let's talk about investing and giving. Investing and giving. Okay, so as I mentioned, 20% of your income, more if you can, should go into the buffers that we talked about in episode 30. And besides the buffers, the rest of the money you have available after your buffers, I recommend putting it into investments and giving. Now let me talk about investments a bit here. I actually, in terms of investments, I don't try to make my living expenses from investments. I think that requires a lot of money because investments, you know, conservative, stable investments might bring you somewhere around, you know, if you're lucky, 5 to 10% annual return. And then you have to pay taxes on that. So whatever's left is, if you want to live on, you know, 2 to 7%, you have to have a lot of money saved up to be able to live on 2 to 7% post after tax investments. So I don't have anywhere near that amount, right? And I don't plan to have that amount. So in terms of investing, I am very, very conservative because I believe in what Warren Buffett says. Warren Buffett, which is one of the most successful investors of all time, he says the #1 rule of investing is never lose money. Never lose money. And the second rule of investing is never forget rule #1. Again, Warren Buffett says then rule #1, never lose money. Rule #2, never forget rule #1. So I actually have really taken that to heart. So I invest in stuff where I don't lose money. And I'll tell you what my recommendation there is. Of course, there's certificates of deposit, which is extremely tiny amounts of return, like usually less than 1% return, and I think that's really, really extreme. I mean, that doesn't even keep up with inflation, for crying out loud. My recommendation for conservative investments is not the stock market. It's not even bonds. My recommendation is peer-to-peer lending, using websites that diversify your money among tens of thousands of individuals who are borrowing money to consolidate their debt. They're borrowing money to have a lower interest rate on their credit card debt, or have a lower interest rate on their mortgage, or have a lower interest rate on their student loans. And the two websites I want to recommend are lendingclub.com, lendingclub, L-E-N-D-I-N-G, club.com. And then the competitor, which is also good, is prosper.com, Prosper.com. These two websites allow you, and by the way, I know these two websites work for people who have U.S. bank accounts. I don't know about outside. Check it out, because they might be able to serve your country as well. But if not, if Lending Club and Prosper don't serve your country, just go to google.com and search peer-to-peer lending and then your country, and you'll probably find the right sites. But check this out. I invest in Lending Club right now. I'm going to also invest in Prosper, but right now I'm only using Lending Club, and they give you from conservative to risky, so A, B, C, D, E, F. Of course, the most risky is the highest returns, like up to like 20-something, like 20% return, something like that. The most safe, the most risk-free, relatively risk-free, is about 4.5% return. This is lending money to the people with the highest credit scores, that have years of credit history and the highest possible credit scores. So very reliable people, and you still get a 4.5% return by putting your money. And you put, let's say, $10,000 in a Lending Club, they will diversify that amount to thousands of borrowers. And so it's extremely diversified, so it's very safe, and their return rate is extremely high. The payback rate is extremely high. I have found it to be very, very reliable. So please look into it. I think that This is where Lending Club and Prosper, these are the sites where I am putting my long-term care savings. So like, as I mentioned before, I am planning to work and earn money until the day that I can no longer do it. And that's when I have dementia. Thankfully, if I lose, I'm no longer able to walk, I'm still going to make money because I make money through the internet. Only when I have dementia is when I cannot make money. So I'm saving for and I was doing some research this morning on what's the average number of years that someone lives with dementia after they have dementia. And here's some interesting research for you here. Based on my research, the average is 12 years. Now, the earlier you get dementia in your life, the longer you live, just because if you get dementia in your mid-50s, you'll probably still live until your 70s or 80s, right? So that's like a long time, 15, 20 years. But if you get dementia later in life, in your mid-80s, you might only live for 5 years, okay? So I'm looking at my long-term savings is my dementia time, okay? I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to have dementia, but you never know. Actually, the rate of dementia is going up. More and more people are getting dementia. So I'm just going to assume that I'm going to have dementia. I'm not going to be able to use my mind to earn money at some point. And the average is 12 years. That includes from symptoms until death. And I don't believe in death. I believe that we are just graduating from this particular life and going on to the next one. So I know I'm extremely chipper about death, right? I am, because I really believe that this is just a drop in the bucket. This very life is a drop in the bucket to our eternal soul's consciousness and growth. So, I put my long-term care savings. I'm trying to save up to 12 years of, very, very modest living expenses for my dementia time. Okay, so I basically have a set amount that I'm trying to save for my long-term care each month. Once I have paid my expenses, paid off my credit cards, put my money into my savings for my parents as well as for my long-term care, then the rest of the money that's left is giving. So let's talk about giving a little bit, okay? I actually don't really believe in giving to charity. I know that sounds horrible. I do give some to charity, but most of my giving money I prefer to put into social entrepreneurship investments. Not that I'm trying to make money from it, but I want to keep money circulating. My belief about charity, I would say probably most charities, is we give money to charity and they feed the poor, or they help the environment, or whatever it is they're doing. They help solve some disease or something like that. But a lot of charities, when we give money to them, subconsciously it strengthens their need to exist, right? For paying money to a Feed the Poor organization, first of all, the poor are just, oh great, free food, free services, cool. It doesn't subconsciously make them want to rise themselves up and do this stuff when they're very comfortable, right? I'm sorry. I know I sound horrible and callous, but that's not what I mean to sound. But you know what I mean, is that subconsciously hardship makes us want to stand up and say, I have to frickin' get out of this mess somehow, and let me look around and see who else is getting out of the mess and how can I get out of the mess, right? Now, I'm not saying don't feed the poor. Okay, I do give some money to that too, but I primarily believe in giving to natural disasters. I mean that we got to help people who just went through a natural disaster. But there are better ways of solving poverty. There are better ways of solving environmental problems. There are better ways of solving diseases than just giving to charity. I believe the better way is through social entrepreneurship. These are people who are using the ingenuity of building a business to solve social problems, building a business to solve poverty, building a business to solve environmental challenges, building a business to prevent or solve diseases. I want to invest in businesses like that, not that I want a return, it's because I want to keep my money circulating. Because if I invest in a business that's solving a social problem, even if they give me 0% return, I don't care. I want my money back so I can further put that money into solving more social problems. So here are some resources I want to give you for that. Probably the easiest way you can do it is by going to kiva.org. K as in my last name cow. Kiva, Kiva.org. I don't have any. I'm not related to the company, but they are a wonderful website that allows you to invest your money into people who are starting businesses in the poorest of areas. So if they can have a successful business in that poor area, they will create jobs and lift other people up in their poor area. What a wonderful way to end poverty, right? If you want to strictly give money to charity, two websites I mentioned before, I'll mention it again, is givingwhatwecan.org. They research charity and give you only the few that are the most effective, like $1 spent equals one life saved, that type of thing, like evidence-based charities. Givingwhatwecan.org. The other one is givewell.org. Givewell.org. All right. Some more resources on social entrepreneurship investing is I'll put a bunch of links in the mind map, which will be given in the episode notes. But a couple of concepts to share with you. Impact investing, and you can Google these things to find out more. Impact investing is a whole school of thought and a whole community of people, of investors, who are investing their money with the return on investment being the change that they want to see in the world, measured change, as well as some financial return. So that's pretty cool. Another one that's even more radical is called regenerative. Oh, I'm sorry. Another one that's pretty radical also is called community investing. And this is investing money, for example, in community development financial institutions. So you give money to these community investment funds. They lend money to poor businesses in the community that they can then expand their business and help that community. And then sometimes you can get that money back and reinvest it in that kind of stuff. A more radical one is called regenerative investing. And I find a lot of promise in that, and I'm going to be researching more into this. Regenerative investing is taking money and investing in businesses that are actually regenerating the earth. So not only are we, normally socially responsible investing is investing in companies that are doing less pollution than others. Well, regenerative investing is investing in businesses that are actually planting trees, a sustainable, biodiverse trees, or they are cleaning up the oceans or something like that. So it's really cool stuff. Anyway, so that's probably enough for now. Again, I will give you a mind map that contains all these different links for further research. And I'll end the episode by reading an iTunes review I got back in April that I didn't find until recently. And it's by someone in Canada. Their username was Reactor Rat. And they said that this podcast is bridging the gap between business and positive, authentic ethics, offering both new age and ancient wisdom to anyone who is an entrepreneur or just exploring the possibilities. So thank you, Reactor Rat, for that wonderful review. If you wish to also write a review on iTunes, you can go to ourhighestwork.com and then click on review, and there will be a very simple way you can write a review on iTunes. I love reading your reviews, and it helps others to find this podcast. It helps to bump up this podcast in the rankings when you do that. So thank you for being part of this community, and until the next episode, keep your thoughts positive, keep your heart open. Be well.